Welcome back to Boiler House Garage and to part 4 of our series sorting out several issues with my Mark 7 Fiesta ST that I bought back in the summer. In this video we'll be replacing the old knackered and torn Forge Motorsport induction kit, replacing it with a Ford warranty approved Mountune Airbox that I picked up from eBay, as it thankfully includes the missing top part of the airbox, which is a standard OE Fiesta part, as Mountune only make this metal lower part that replaces the original lower plastic airbox. It also has the stock air feed that I'm also missing. I'm hoping I can keep this whole thing together once I've ripped out the cone air filter and crap shield thing. When it's out, I'll have to figure out where this secondary cold air feed pipe goes, which is made from air porous water resistant tubing. So I've started by loosening up the Jubilee clip from the main air inlet pipe that I'll be keeping for now. Then I'll remove the MAF sensor, which just has 2 small hex bolts, and ideally keep it attached as there's some insulation tape on it and perhaps the plug is damaged. The original airbox has its own moulded section for the MAF sensor, so this fitted section can be discarded along with the busted cone filter. Using a H3 I think that is, hex bit or Allen key, I'm removing the 2 small bolts holding in the MAF. With it loose it will fully withdraw, and you do have to be careful with the sensor itself as it can be fragile. They can be cleaned but only with a light solvent spray. I'm just carefully going to place it on the battery and use the handy terminal cover to hold the wires out the way. Sometimes replacing this can cure airflow codes if there's nothing as obvious as the damaged cone filter. That can now be withdrawn. It's very dry and dusty feeling. Oh, it's a Pipercross product which Ford's obviously use in their kit. I'm not slating the product quality since this car has a clear history of neglect, and these should be cleaned every year. From here we can see how much worse the rip is, so I'm more and more confident that this is the cause of the issues. One thing I will slate is this metal shield, which seems to limit cold air flow to just the grille. It has more hex bolts for us to undo. I'm using a H5 to undo them, but annoyingly the metal shield's plate thing doesn't have captive nuts, so they just spin as you try and undo them. Feels like a 10mm, so I'm going to hold the nut with a small spanner with one hand and then do the bolt with the other. These 2 lower ones will be a little more awkward to get to, but as I'm bending the plate, I'm just going to bend it to give myself access. I don't know what it is, but there's an extremely sticky tar-like substance on the edge here, so I'm glad to be getting a shot of this. This does give me plenty of access, plus I can just take a look to make sure that's all that's holding this in place. I've washed my hands 3 times and there's still that sticky crap on there. Anyway, with just these 3 bolts out the way, we can yank this plate out of here. The 2 rubber bushes in here aren't too squished up from the bolts, as the airbox just pushes into them to secure it with no fasteners needed. This space also gives us the opportunity to see where the lower pipe is supposed to go. It does appear to be a little squash, so I guess it just gets jammed into a cavity. Somewhere in the inner wing. It seems the most sensible place would be between this charge pipe and the inner bumper iron. I'm not exactly sure on that though, and I suppose it could be pushed through from underneath or even pulled through if you take the headlamp out like I did in the last video. I'll be honest and say I am considering leaving the secondary pipe off altogether, as this open area is already going to be a good source of cool air, and the airbox doesn't sit so low as if it's going to be sucking up a load of water. This front mounted intake pipe will also be taking in a lot of air as the car is moving forward. Once the box is in place, I still have the option to refit the pipe from underneath anyway, so call me lazy, but I'm going to fit it without for now. Plus it might help to retain some of the induction sound and dump valve noise I'm going to lose by not having a cone filter anymore. So the pipe is off, and you can also see the two pegs that push into the rubber bushes I mentioned. There's also another rubber bush that appears to be a push fit next to the intake piece. Inside we should see a new reusable cotton filter. I'm not sure if it's K&N or where Mountune sourced them from. I'd say no to it being K&N as they have a different colour red and smell a familiar way. Now let's see if I can just drop the whole assembled box in one go. I could sort of, but I did have to undo this breather or recirculator pipe so I could lift the large intake pipe out of the way. After that it just pushed in nice and easy. The only issue I notice now is that the moulding the MAF sensor goes into is at a higher point than the aftermarket one, so I am going to have to remove the tape and unplug it after all. The front grille air feed pipe also clipped on easily, and you can see the rubber bushing to the right of it is now secured. The good news is that nothing appears to be broken on the MAF plug or the plastics on the sensor itself, so not sure what the tape was actually needed for. The two small bolts are different between this airbox and the aftermarket section, so that's something to bear in mind if you're buying second-hand components like I am. The MAF only fits properly one way. You can in theory get it in backwards, but there's a big gap and it should look obviously wrong. It'll almost certainly throw a code again if this is in the wrong way. The bolts of this also have little washers too, and I'll show you a comparison of the different threads on the old aftermarket bolts to the sharper screw-like ones as standard, remembering that the Mountune parts use the standard airbox upper section. They're torqued bolts or screws as well. Now that's the MAF wired back in. I suppose this could do with a little tape to protect these wires at some point. This intake pipe is proving to be a bit troublesome to get over the join here, mainly because I fitted it as one piece and there's no movement, but a light squirt of silicone will get that on. We're pretty much done, just need to secure the Jubilee clip, then refit the breather recirculator. What even is this for? Then a double check that everything else is still secured and connected. Join me in the next video to see how the ST is progressing and hopefully the code is gone. Please subscribe to be notified of that, and also the various repair, fuel testing and eclectic videos I upload as I upload them. Thanks very much for watching.